أسؤول لا ميم رارح أول جيري كول لاي أول ميم أول لاي جيموهم أورار ميم إير أسؤول لاي أول Wo.
Welcome to Entangled Health, where we explore the intersections of quantum science, AI, biotechnology, and human well-being. My name is Thomas, and I'm convinced that health innovation happens at the entangled boundaries, where cutting-edge physics meets biology, where consciousness research intersects with technology, and where visionary thinking transforms into practical solutions. We are bringing together pioneers, researchers, and innovators who are reshaping how we understand and experience health. What if our computers weren't made of silicon, but of living cells? What if the music we listen to wasn't just composed by a human, but co-created in a duet with a single-celled organism? My guest today is a pioneer who lives and breathes these questions. Professor Eduardo Miranda is a composer and the director of the Interdisciplinary Center for Computer Music Research at the University of Plymouth. He's a globally recognized leader in the fields of biocomputing and quantum music. His work doesn't just push the boundaries of art. It forces us to reconsider the very nature of intelligence, creativity, and life itself. Today, we'll journey from the concert hall to the petri dish, exploring how Professor Miranda harnesses slime molds and quantum computers to create art. And we'll ask a provocative question: could these living symphonies hold the key to future of entangled, adaptive, and truly personalized healthcare? A quick disclaimer: all chats at Entangled Health are a co-creation between the guest and myself, and not an official statement from our industries. We are here in a personal capacity, so everything we share is just our own take, not the official view of any company, nor of my employer or any other organization. Today it's a pleasure and a really honor to have you. So hello, Eduardo.
Hi, Thomas. It's a pleasure to be here. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, really nice to see you. And our frequent listeners know that I'm always keen to asking my guest as a first question what their reaction or your reaction was when I reached out to talk about entangled health. So your work is not about only a creativity, but in principle health in everyone, so even awarded by the Queen. Can you just tell our listeners a bit what your interpretation or your reaction was?
My interpretation of entangled health. I'm not sure. I would say something that looks maybe to approach the body and mind and overall well-being from the perspective of maybe quantum mechanics and quantum physics, because entangled kind of suggests quantum computing and things like that. So I would say that it's focusing on understanding how fundamental energies that make up the universe, like sound, light, electromagnetic fields, and so on, may affect the human body and mind.
Really good. So this, because you bring up sound and of course you bring up sound.
Yeah, I mean, it's when I heard this term first time, I was not quite sure what to make out of it, but it's a nice, intriguing term that makes I think brings ideas that are not so clear cut.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the ambition of the podcast, to really bring people together who should know of each other but are in different domains, and then you just don't have the overlap, and then
I like that. Yeah. And I heard some of your previous editions of the podcast, and I really had a good time listening to them. So
thanks.
I'm very pleased to be here.
Thanks. So before we start going into what we got to know each other better is quantum or slime modes. I think
Yeah.
it's always good to start to know a bit the person who makes us who we are, where we come from, etc. And I think you have quite a long history in composing, but also engineering. So wherever you want to start, if you look back at childhood, can you share a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I've been always a musician, so to speak. I used to say that my first musical instrument was the amateur radio of my dad. He used to be a keen amateur radio, and I used to play with the dial to make to be out of tune sort of sounds, like the space age kind of sounds and stuff. So this, since very early on, sounds was my thing. And then I started studying piano as we do. I mean, when we were a kid, I started playing the piano. I was 6, 7 years old. But it's a common thing. I mean, when you reach the age to go to college, then you have to make decisions in life, what you are going to study. And it was clearly that a music career was not particularly, something
Financial
that,
stable.
yeah, and now it's interesting, but I would not have been, I didn't think I would be a performer, a pianist, or a violinist to play with an orchestra and so on, because I was not that good. I liked to play. So I decided to do computer science. Now that was the mid of 1980s. Um, and I went to college, did computer science, programmed computers with punched cards. I don't know if you remember those. You submit a stack of punch cards to the computer, and then next days you get the result and things like that. So it's more or less what we do with quantum computers today,
These
right?
days, yeah.
But anyway, so I did that, and then I graduated, and I got a job as a system analyst in a company in Rio de Janeiro, and I was developing systems for automation of supermarkets. Kind of barcodes, scan barcodes, then get prices and stock lists and things
They
like
also
that.
make music, by the way.
But I mean, after a year or so, I got a bit frustrated with that kind of thing. I thought this is not for me really, and you know I decided to change course, and I went back to university to do music. And then I was doing conducting. I was studying to be a conductor. And one day I was in the library of at the music school, and I found a book, which when I opened the book, I could not understand much of it because it was in French. And but I saw Venn diagrams, logic equations, and so on. I thought, wow, this is not music. These are things that I understand. And then it was written by a composer called Yanis Xenakis, who was at the time a contemporary music composer, and he was talking about music with terminology that I knew. And then I thought, wow, this is great. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do mathematical music. I'm going to program computers to make music, because I had the knowledge to bring that theoretical framework into practical, practical musical compositions and so on. So I decided then to stop the music course, and and dedicated myself to using computers to make music with. Um, and there was also a very practical reason for doing that, because the music I was interested in composing, it was very difficult to get performers to play. So what I realized that, well, maybe if I start making electronic music, I can make my own sounds and I can program machines to play my stuff. I don't need to be begging orchestras and musicians to play what I was writing. So that was a convenient move, I say. But talking to to a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, who said, "Oh well, I know this professor in the computing school that was in Brazil. That he's very interested in formal logics and he likes music. So maybe you should talk to him." Then I went to talk to him and I said, "Look, I'm a composer and I have a computer science background and I would like to collaborate, to see if we can get some project together and so on." And he convinced me to enroll in a master's in AI. So I started doing a master's in AI, and then it turns up that I got a scholarship to go abroad, and I went to the UK to do a master's degree in electronic music, and then I enrolled at the University of Edinburgh AI department to do to do a PhD in music and AI. So I think I was one of the first person who did this kind of PhD. I graduated in 1990
Early days.
with a PhD in using AI to make sounds.
This is interesting.
And so, yeah, I mean, I've been doing AI in music before AI became
AI, the hype.
became the hype. So at the time we were working with symbolic AI. The neural networks were not even known yet. Um, everything was rule based, symbolically coded, and so on, which I think is still the way to go. But
to mix, we can maybe later speculate a bit.
But that is that's my opinion. So that's it, Thomas. That's how I started working with computers and music. So I don't see a distinction between art and science, and music and science. And so for me, they are the same thing.
And this is really an interesting perspective we currently need more, to have a bit more the insight that science is creation, music is creation, and many of the very intelligent scientists have been musicians, and Einstein, for example.
I mean, I think the distinction, of course, there are methodologies. I mean, if you are, if you are working with, you have to come up with a vaccine, there are methodologies to do that. You have to be thorough, you have to be, you have to have evidence of things and so on. But there are other applications, there are other situations where a more artistic approach is perfectly,
sound therapy,
and I think that there are shades in between, and this is where I am. I can clearly see in my research, for example, when I needed to be, when I need some results to be proven. So then I go for it and I try to prove the results in a more objective way. But that does not mean that my music needs to be objective. I can be very subjective, based on the objective results that you can get from an algorithm or something like that. And there were cases, Thomas, where I was, I was kind of stuck on some experiment or some, especially when I worked with brain-computer interfaces, where if I did not have the flexible approach that I do sometimes, have when I'm doing science, I would probably not have done the things that I have accomplished.
And I think, as you just mentioned, this BCI, so brain computer interfaces. So you have, if I'm not wrong, it's called Paramusical Ensemble.
That's right.
Can you tell me more, because this is really fantastic? So I just saw that, I recall that you enable disabled, not mentally but physically disabled persons to do music again by reading their brainwaves. So this is
this is again, it's it's all by chance that I came to do that. um, because being an AI person, AI is to do with modeling intelligence and modeling processes, cognitive processes, and so on. And I have always been very curious about the brain, how the brain works and so on. So I've been studying neurobiology and neuroscience, to be able to model, how the brain works and cognitive processes work and so on. And I've met a music therapist at a conference, in a neuroscience conference, um, Wendy McGee, and she was at the time um, working at the hospital, Royal Hospital for Neurodisability in London, and chatting to her, well, I'm a musician. I'm very interested in understanding the brain and so on. Then she said, well, yeah, I'm a musician as well, but I work with severely motor impaired patients, and I try to use music to as a palliative, maybe care component to make them happy or more responsive or something. But then she mentioned to me that one of the problems that she identifies, that music is powerful, but but listening is not enough. You have to make it. You have to be engaged in making music, so that to activate your brain in specific ways. And then I had this kind of brainwave, so to speak. Well, maybe we could try to develop some form of interface where we could read signals from the brain in a way or another, and use the signals to make music, perhaps as a musical instrument. And this is then how I started looking into this. I knew at the time that the electroencephalogram could be read with sensors. Uh, Hospitals use still use very much. It's a very well established technique.
You mean the EEGs, the caps?
EEG, exactly, to read the electrical behavior of the brain. And I managed to convince my department here to buy an EEG equipment. I hacked it because at that moment the EEG equipment was just to plot the graphs, but I wanted to get the signal and work with the signal. So then I began to study the signal. I began to realize that there were signals that correspond to different cognitive activities. The simple one, for example, is when you are focusing attention on something, you produce a lot of the so-called alpha waves. If you are distracted, if you are not focusing on anything, you tend to produce waves that are noisier, the so-called beta waves. And I began to use machine learning to be able to distinguish between these different kinds of electrical brain waves, that try to classify them according to specific cognitive tasks that people were doing. Then I realized that it is not as easy as one may think it is. That we are very different from each other, Thomas. Our brains is like our fingerprint, right? We are very different, and trying to find common ground between people's brain is fiendish. It is really difficult. So then I kind of began to look into other techniques. For example, what if I could stimulate, give stimulate to people to stimulate the brain somehow, and then use that for making people to train themselves to produce specific brainwaves. So after many years of experiments with PhD students, research assistants, and so on, it took about 8-9 years to get into a place where I could train people to produce specific kinds of waves. We developed a method for doing that. And then we developed this system where, depending on specific signals that patients, in this case, could produce, I could use them as switches to switch things on and off.
So in principle, a MIDI control based on...
It could be a MIDI controller, could be a switch for anything, really. In my case, create musical instruments. And and then we also developed a more precise way to use the brain signals to control things, which is to focus on the activity of the visual cortex. So by putting electrodes at the back of the skull, we were able to tap into signals that corresponded to the visual stimuli. And interestingly, we worked with the idea of stimulating the brain with different frequencies of light. In this case, it's very simple. If you have icons flashing at different frequencies on a computer screen or a light bulb or whatever, you can detect at the
resonance signal.
Exactly, you can detect in the EEG of the visual cortex the frequency of that flashing stimuli. So, for example, if you have a flashing light flashing at 5 hertz speed, another one with 7 hertz, another one with 13 hertz, we could detect those components very clearly in the EEG, and then we could use that as ways for people to make choices by looking at things.
And then you say, okay, if I play the 5 hertz, it's a C, and if I play the 13 hertz, it's whatever.
That's it. But then there is another effect, which is very interesting, which is the more intent you look at that particular stimuli, the higher is the amplitude of that signal in the brainwave. So then we were able to use that not only as a switch, but as a potentiometer. We could switch things on and make it stronger and higher and lower, which means that we could have, imagine you have a mixing desk with the faders.
And then you
could get the faders up and down by looking at them.
So I think if we would have the translator to cut in some audio files, just an example for the listeners to have, maybe we can check if we have some.
I can give you some examples. But what we did then, we developed all sorts of interfaces for people to play with. So we had, for example, little phrases on the computer screen that then they could select the little phrases, play with a MIDI controller or play in a synthesizer. But the idea of the paramusical ensemble went a little beyond that. I developed a composition that's a kind of a Rubik cube, right? You can select. It's a kind of a complex domino where you put a card on the table, then there are many options to follow that. Now you put another one, then there are many options to follow that. So my composition was a game where you could select a bar of music, and then the system would provide you many others that could follow that one. So this means, for example, that a person could select with the brain signal one bar of music, and then the system would give many options to select others, and each option was flashing at a particular frequency. that you could look at
You
them
can then, okay.
and select them. But what we did, instead of using a synthesizer, we sent the options to a computer score for a real musician to play.
Okay.
So we had a string quartet, and
Okay.
we had a quartet of motor disabled, impaired people, and they were sending those segments to this for the string quartet to play. So there was a that's why we called paramusical ensemble, because it was a quartet of brains
Playing with
composing the music for a string quartet to play in real time.
Okay. In principle, similar to what we did, or what you showed in the Ligeti Museum back then in Hamburg, but instead of having it generated by brains to perform with violins, the violins performed it for the quantum computer, looping it. Maybe we can talk about.
Yeah, that was the approach is more or less the same.
Yeah.
You know, I think the key thing here, from an artistic point of view, you need to make the music to make sense.
Yes, which is not so easy.
Yeah, exactly. So I spent a lot of time trying to make this highly combinatorial piece that that would not matter what combinations you got, it would always sound okay. Sometimes more okay than other times, and this also enabled the performers to make choices. Now I could see, for example, them playing with each other, right? Now I'm going to put this session here now that's really difficult to follow, and then the other one would find it difficult.
You play
right?
the solo; it's too complicated.
Yeah, and it was interesting because at the end of the day, what the medical staff at the hospital told me is that this was brilliant, because those patients, technology is nothing new to them, because they have to use technology to communicate. But these technology that are developed for those patients are always a one-to-one thing. It's a one person in front of a computer, and a computer giving feedback for that person. But what we created here was a way where four people were able to communicate between themselves, and that is actually,
that is the social component.
Exactly. They were playing with each other, even though they were not able to talk, they were not able to make gestures and so on, but they were paralyzed from the neck down, Thomas. I mean, they only had very little eye movement or mouth movement, right? But they were talking, they were communicating emotions to themselves.
Which is, themselves. I mean, for a real, let's say, for a band musician, the worst thing that can happen is if you can't interact with your bandmates, because it's just communication. Music is just communication.
Correct. Yeah. And maybe this is relates to your entanglement thing, right?
Yes.
I think those four it's a locked-in syndrome. That's what it's called. Yeah. Those four people, they were communicating between themselves, right? And in a ways that was not possible before.
And I was always thinking, if one could even, if you imagine music, or you have some thoughts, and you're really a musician, so you have your inner whatever things, as a composer. And an ideal way would, of course, be, instead of transforming this to motor movement, to sound movement, back to movement in your inner cells and the ear, and then the pulsing, and then generating thoughts in your head. A brain to brain communication.
Yes, this is a difficult thing. I confess that I was looking into this.
You were, okay, me too.
But it's easy to read the brain, but it's not easy to put things inside our brain. There were many attempts, even actually last century, there were many attempts at doing this. That there were very, very weird books I found of people trying to stimulate the brain.
Mm.
People can do that, to stimulate the brain to for specific treatments, but to put ideas inside our
Yeah, I think
brain, that's
it
impossible. No,
doesn't. It
that
doesn't
doesn't
work.
work.
No. And I think this brings me to. I'm not sure in how far you buy into the thought, but there is the idea that we have a noosphere, or the ideas are outside of our head, yeah, and our brains are just tuning in, and I'm selecting the channel, and therefore I think it's of course quite difficult to put things in the brain, because if they're outside of the brain by definition,
exactly. Yeah,
it's rather better to
yeah.
read the signal and put it in the ether, or however you might want to call it, and then others can
in many ways, a brain-computer interface, if you have wireless communication, if you have very small electrodes in very good amplifiers, you could relate to some sort of telepathy, even though if I send my telepathic thoughts to you, it would be almost impossible for you to think, to know what I'm thinking. But you would get some signal of some sort,
Mm-hmm.
and that signal may do something in your body. But I think this is not, it is not communication in the sense of how we understand communication today. It's an entanglement, let's say. It's a connection that may happen. But
it's not really the only. But I think as a band musician, sometimes you have these, so you jam together with a band, and you look at each other, and in one moment in time you feel a bit more than yourself.
That's
so
it.
You're just performing as an ensemble, and then everybody, just like a flock of birds, switches in an unseen, spontaneous reaction. But everybody's going.
These things happen. These things do happen. And it is in music performance. This is something that people study a lot, in music psychology and so on, and how to listen to each other and just be in the flow of things. And this happens. It's not only music, in anything. And these things can happen, but it's not well understood. And it is very difficult to figure out what's going on. Maybe these kinds of technologies that we are developing now can help in the future to understand what's going on. But there is some sort of communication going on that is implicit, maybe by chance, or maybe entrainment. Maybe we entrain to each other. And if you are with a band of jazz musicians improvising, and you really get on with it, you know each other, the magic happens. But the magic does not happen when you don't entrain, when you don't.
That's right.
When you don't connect. So there is something that needs to be done, needs to happen, but we cannot force it. We do not know how to do it. So
I'm keen to just go a bit deeper into this sensing part, because we just don't know. And I'm always keen to explore quantum sensors. I mean, they produce classical data, of course, but we're just digesting the potential of very weak magnetic sensors with heavy centers or what have you. Do you think this might be helping also the creative part, or even then going more into these brain-computer interfaces for whatever?
Definitely. I think sensing is the key here. I'm very interested in quantum sensing, but because the brain, living organisms produce signals, right? That's it. So we can detect the signals. They are very faint, and the technology that we have today are not so good. We have fMRI machines, which are quantum, if you think about it, but it's very dependent on modeling. So those machines are actually very sophisticated predictors of what they expect to see. So and it takes a lot of time. It takes 4 or 5 seconds for a full scan to to happen for the full brain scan to happen. Um, so that's why MRI machines are not good for brain-computer interfaces. First, because they are too big, you cannot take them around. But the time resolution is very poor.
Yeah, it should be very long-lasting musical
Yeah.
compositions.
And the electrical signals are there, but unless you open your skull and you put electrodes inside inside the skull, then
there's
the
one
signal
guy who's trying to do this, but I'm not so sure it's a good idea.
the signal you get is very poor.
Yes, yes. Let maybe just switch a bit gears, because I on Discord, for example, you're the biocomputer, so your handle is biocomputer. Yeah. You want to talk a bit on why this is?
Okay. Well, being someone who is interested in AI and someone who has an avid interest in neuroscience and brain science and so on. From very early on, Thomas, I realized that AI is software, right?
Mm-hmm.
And software needs hardware
mm-hmm.
to run. And AI today runs on a piece of hardware that has not changed very much since the 1950s and 1940s. No, it's all switches. It's all digital.
It's all a bit digital, yeah.
Digital, it's on and off.
mm-hmm.
And I always wondered, is there any other kind of computer out there? Can we design any other kind of computer? Can we harness other materials to do computation for us? And of course, one of the a natural progression here would be to build to build computers using real neurons. I mean that's what some people are doing this now. But I always wanted to do this, and over 10 years ago, I think, even perhaps more, I teamed up with some people here in Bristol, just close to Plymouth, at the University of West of England. They were looking into growing neurons on Petri dishes, as multi-electrode array dishes. So they were taking neurons from chicken embryos, growing these Petri dishes, and then stimulating the neurons and look at the microscope to see if they could foster synapses, natural synapses. Then I thought, oh, this is fantastic. So I want to do this. So
you bought a chicken.
Yeah, I mean, we began to look into how can we use these signals to make something with it. We even developed a little synthesizer that we could put electricity into this chicken brain, and then we read the spikes of the neurons and use that to control a synthesizer. So that was pretty cool. But then it was clear that at the time it was very difficult thing to do. And so then I came across with another organism, which was much simpler, but behaved quite similarly to those neurons, which is the slime mold, Physarum polycephalum. And then I became hooked into this, fascinated with this organism, because you could foster, the shape of the how it grows, and not only me but other people at the time realized that this organism could behave as some sort of pretty much like electronic components like resistors, capacitors, and even a component called memristor.
The memristor, yeah.
So so this is how I began to look into how can I develop a computer to this? Can I harness these organisms to process data for me? And we managed to do a few things. We built logic gates with this line mode. We could add two numbers. We could We could do an OR gate, an AND gate, and so on. So we built little circuits, very very simple, but nevertheless they were there. They were gates. So we could
And this is analog stuff, of course. It's not
analog.
digital, so it's not pulsing. So you
No,
didn't
no,
do
it's
the pulses.
analog
Yeah.
gates. Analog, because we call gates because if it went above a certain threshold,
okay,
then it
firing.
was 1. If it was below the threshold, it was 0. So we could simulate those things. But what was interesting is that we could kind of make this organism to memorize to memorize the stimuli that we input to it. So, and this is essentially what a memristor does. So we devised, at the end of the day, we devised a circuit that we could input electrical signals to it, then we could read current, and we use these readings to build some sort of Markov chain, if you like.
Okay.
We could know it's a Markov chain where the transition probabilities were not numbers, but the current that we could read from this organism. So then, of course, as a composer, that have to make music with
interesting.
That. Right. So what we did, we basically I say we because there was myself and 2 PhD students of mine. But we developed this machine, a biological machine that could read notes. These notes were then transformed into voltages that were input into the system, and then the system memorized the sequence of notes as a kind of a biomarkov chain. And then we could ask the system to generate sequences based on this learning in the form of current, and this current was then transformed into musical information. So that's when I came up with this idea of the biocomputer music concept, where I had this bio organism that that could listen to what I was playing and could make responses back to me as if it was a musician improvising.
A musician improvising, artificial small brain.
And it works. It's there. I still sometimes play around with it. Of course, it's a very limiting system because for fun is good, but there is no use for it because, for example, we need to replace the design mode component very very frequently.
Okay.
Because even during a performance, it dies.
Oh well.
Yeah, because if
death
you are
metal, so to say.
Yeah, if you are inputting lots of voltages to the thing, now it will fry it basically. So it
you can eat it afterwards.
Yeah. So there must be a ways of doing it, better than we did. Like I was talking with synthetic biologists, to see if there would be a way to fabricate these organisms in a way that would be robust and et cetera, et cetera. Everything is possible theoretically, but in practice, it needs time, it needs money, and if I only had the cash that the quantum computing industry has at the moment to develop these things, I would develop fantastic biocomputers.
If the AI bubble bursts, we have billions and trillions and quadruple out Googling whatever.
Yeah, exactly. and again, this is what led me to look into quantum computers, basically, because I put the bio thing aside for the moment, and I realized, okay, in my quest for new kinds of hardware, it seemed 7 years ago, 7 years ago, it seemed quite natural to investigate what these people are doing, harnessing quantum mechanics to process information, which is very interesting. I think that this is what I'm doing at the moment.
Because I think there are different ways, and I mean we know our friends from Moth and all the other guys who are doing quantum using in principle the Bloch sphere
right
to generate FM modulations, etc. But I was always wondering if there is more to it, because if we really go deep and say entangled, so in principle you could say I'm making music and store it as quantum information, and every participant at the concert is observing it with his own observation, and then eventually he's hearing something else. So I was just wondering if this is technically possible or if it makes sense, because it's always difficult as a musician to use things to make music, because sometimes it's just noise, and if you really want to, if you're in the groove.
I see. I mean, there are many things that can be done with quantum mechanics, and it took me time to learn all this. But now I think we can we can harness these kinds of computations to do very interesting things. And for example, I'm working on a piece at the moment where it's very nice that we have access to hundreds of qubits now, because what I'm doing is I'm representing my musical composition. Now, it basically I'm going back to that the Rubik cube that I did for the brain project. But what I'm doing now is much more sophisticated. I have these very complex musical materials that can be combined in infinite ways. Okay, and this musical material now I'm encoding it as a quantum circuit to generate a quantum state. Okay, so the idea is that every time I run this circuit, it will generate a quantum state, and when I measure this, it will give me one version of the music. And if I measure again, it gives me another version of the music. So this means that I have, instead of having a sound file in my iPhone or my computer, what I have is a quantum circuit. So my music is represented in terms of a quantum circuit that generates a quantum state. And every time I listen to it, I will get a different version.
Yes. This is, by the way, also the quantum question pool. So there is this pool, and then it's encoded. It's just running because it's
that's right. And you can imagine the case, you go to a concert and everyone will listen to one version of the piece. This is interesting because it's different, right? It's a different concept than have a generative system that generates a different sequence every time. In this case here, I have the whole piece as a quantum state. And when I measure it, I get it instantaneously out.
And one times you get a Grammy, and the otherwise you get booze.
We don't know. We don't know what you get, but that is what I'm working at the moment. So it's very tricky to design this kind of representations and to get the proper quantum circuit representation and so on. But watch this space. This is
and I think it's also if we see these days all the Gen AI and all these legally or not legally sourced thing, and as an artist, I mean, you run Zuno or whatever, and then the music which is produced by the machine is not always worse than what you could come up with yourself. And I think this is really hard also for musicians to make a living these days if you're not really have one of these super brands. And I think that might be really way out. That you say I'm more so. It's more live performance, and it's a unique experience, and either you pay for it or not.
Correct. I'm not interested in AI to imitate people or to rip off people and make pastiches by combining many things. Dogs with 4 legs and cats with 3 ears. I'm not interested in that at all. What I'm interested is in using this, harnessing this technology to come up with something that's different. But the human agency is important. I don't think machines will ever replace a human agency from the creative process. A machine can create some cute things, nice, blah blah, but the human agency is important, because art and music and art in general is communication between, from humans to humans.
And I think it's also coming back to healing. So it helps. I mean, you really see it if you listen to real things. People react differently. So
That's right.
I think that you can.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, it is interesting. There were so many cases that you can get a computer. I've done this so many times, to program a computer to generate musics like Mozart. It's easy. You can do that. The rules are all there, but it's not the same thing.
No, it's a bit
And
different.
it is cute. It is curious. It is nice. And educationally, I think these AI tools are very nice because they enable us to analyze the piece of music, to make sense of the music. Although the AI we have today is completely useless because it does not tell us how it achieved what it achieves.
Most of it doesn't work.
No, it's not. It does not explain anything. It does not tell you what bits and bobs it ripped from here and there to make something. And this is not useful, I think, for the creative. It's good at creating, but it's not good at supporting creators, and this is what we need.
I'm just thinking because you did compose this opera, Lampedusa.
Oh yes.
And when I recall you said you even developed an own language. So
yes.
Tell me more. So I need to know.
Okay. I did not develop my language. This is I have always been fascinated by language. And when I worked for Sony a few years ago, I worked in the computational linguistic group, and we are looking at modeling the origins of language, how language evolved, and what makes people, cultures and so on, develop different languages and so on. And completely by chance, I was giving a talk at a big conference in California a few years ago, and I met David Peterson. David Peterson is a language creator. It's called conlanger, this profession. I did not know it. It's a language creator. He creates languages for Hollywood films, right?
Klingon or whatever.
The Dothraki language for the Game of Thrones, for example, he created it. But when I watched these films, I thought, oh, this is all gibberish, but it's not. Actually, he makes the grammars, he makes everything, and there are people, there are clubs of people that learn this artificial language to talk between themselves. It's completely weird, And I was talking to this guy and I said, look, I have an idea to compose an opera, but I want it to be in an artificial language. Can you make the language for me? He said, of course, this is what I do. So then I told him, okay, he asked me, what do you want this opera to be about? Well, this opera will be about the birth of the world, the birth of the universe. Because I'm using some data from CERN particle collider, where these particles model how the universe originated and so on. So I wanted an opera about this. And then the discussion was, yeah, okay, but we need to create a word for it. We need to create some sort of context. And he suggested, okay, let's create a language called VOV. VOV in VOV means love.
أسؤول لا ميم رح أول جيري كول لاي أول ميم أول ميم لاي تهوف جيهوم جيت لا جيت لو جيت لا.
And we created this language, and the language will evolve itself during the opera. So there will be
أسؤول لا يقول فول
a few movements of the opera, and every movement is about an era of this language. I think, okay, that's really great. But then what else? Where this opera will take place? Then we decided, okay, it will take place somewhere um, um, imaginary, like, for example, in the island where the Tempest, Shakespeare Tempest, took place. But before Miranda and Prospero arrived in the island, right? If you know the Tempest play. So before there were just Caliban and Sycorax and in this island. So we imagine a pre-Shakespearean story where in this island called Lampedusa, because many Shakespeare experts propose that the opera the play that Shakespeare wrote, Tempest, took place in this island, Lampedusa. So we imagine, okay, let's create a language for this island before the Shakespearean play, and that's where the story takes place. But the whole music was generated with data that I got from particle collision models from CERN. So the music is generated by particle collisions, but it is sung in a language that was that predates history.
I think we also need to insert some sound bites for
Yeah,
the audience.
it was completely weird. And we got the BBC singers to sing the opera. I was so amazed how these singers can sing, because they are able to sing in German, in French, in other languages, even not understanding the language. They sing the
They
words
sing the language.
properly.
Yeah.
And these singers were, practicing this language that does not exist. And David was there, coaching them. No, you say this word like this, blah blah blah. No, and they, they learned all of it.
And now they joke in the language.
It was a wonderful experience for me. Quite hard work to make an opera, but some members of the audience were a bit upset that they could not understand anything. But we put the captions in the theaters, the translation.
And I was just thinking, the Lampedusa not also deal with the topic of migration and all bit of a social component, because I think the direction I want to go is, can art or music, even if it's unsung, based on collider data and in a language nobody understands, have a deep emotional healing aspect? Because you mentioned the reaction of the audience. I'm really keen to learn on that.
That is exactly what I wanted to convey in this opera. The meaning, instead of relying on the words and the lyrics and the meaning of the lyrics, I wanted the meaning to come from the prosody, from the way that things were sung, from the audio, from the oral experience, from watching what they were seeing. So I wanted to convey the music in purely subjective ways. And there was, of course, the acting. There was a dancer that was dancing. So one of the actors, the characters in the opera, was a dancer, and she was dancing the lyric instead of singing the lyric, right? So, to answer your question, I think music has this way of communicating things that we cannot describe with words. And I wanted to explore this in this opera to the extreme, to come up with a libretto in a language that was completely invented, but still be able to tell a story. Although David was very clever about about the meaning, the translation, and so on. All the things could be translated into English, no problem. But nevertheless, the performance took place in that particular language, and I wanted to transport the audience to that world that was completely. Maybe it's another world. Maybe it's a multiverse. Maybe we live in a multiverse. Maybe that's a world that could be possible.
Yeah, we're currently exploring vocal biomarkers, so the sound and the musicology of the voice, and it's even a clinically validated marker for people with suicidal tendencies or in depression or whatever.
Right.
And I'm speculating that even the correlations between the frequencies play a role, but it's super speculative. I would not even know how to measure this or how to analyze the vocoder effect or whatever in among these frequencies. And I'm just thinking that eventually the aspect that you had by going completely out of text is helping very much in transporting the deeper message, because you cannot focus on the content because there's no content, you understand, as audience, and you have to listen to the aspect. And I'm just keen. So did the audience, or did you, if you watched the audience while the piece was performed, did you see some clusters that behave the same, or was everybody reacting the same? Or I'm just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, the audience was an audience watching. If I go to an opera sung in German, I wouldn't understand anything, but I would appreciate the spectacle.
Yes.
And I think people were appreciating the music per se, what they were seeing, and so on. But there is one thing that is important, I think. Even with an invented language, even if we invent music to be sung in different ways, we have to follow the physiology of the human voice. Because there are things that we cannot make with our there are syllables that are not natural. And we are lazy, brains are lazy, so we favor the most easier pathway to produce our words, to sing, and so on. And I know that David was very clever about this, because all the syllables, all the words that he made, he produced these words himself first to see if it would fit the voice. If it doesn't, then forget about it. Now, there is a reason for people having the language that we have and not something else like the artificial one we made, right? And these reasons are physiological, cognitive. There is also the what we call the sociological aspects, where we evolve these things together. We favor that things that we hear naturally, that we can produce more naturally. And I think this is probably connected to what you are saying about healing and so on. This when we hear things that make sense in physiological terms, in the biology of things, then we will naturally be attractive to those sounds, right? And this is how harmony in music evolved. At least in the Western world, there are some tonalities that we find more pleasing than others.
Yes.
And this is because of the languages that we speak.
Yeah, and I think also the musical sophistication you are, because if you are a professional jazz musician, you might enjoy the 11/13 whatever chords, and if you're not, then it's just maybe a bit complicated just to listen to it.
Exactly, you evolve these things. There are some things that come naturally, but there are other things that some things are we are biologically wired for. But there are other things that are culturally driven, and this is when things become interesting, I think. Musical tastes and so on. We are able to distinguish things that some other people may not, as musicians. and other cultures may hear things in languages that we don't. You know, and if I try to speak a language that I never heard before, it would be completely crazy,
Yes.
difficult. I would not hear these things.
Yeah.
I remember when I was learning French, living in Paris, there were sounds that I could not hear, and different vowels that I could not make, because it was too late for my brain to adapt. I was already, my plasticity was already done. So
It's just like if you have tried the American speak German with a Ö and Ü, so it's always
it never
they
works.
cannot, and on the other hand, there are things you just, as a typical German, you cannot do.
That's it. That's the plasticity thing.
Yeah, that's the beauty of being diverse. So I'm just looking at the clock, and I want to jump over soon to the quantum selected questions. Okay. But before we do that, you are a professor, which means you're also a mentor, or and I guess you have now a lot of experience based on successful things and how you deal with failures and how to keep up and develop a resilience and how to always move forward, etc. Could you tell our younger listeners, or everyone, the value or a bit of a mentorship advice, how you deal with
it is. I think I have formed almost 40 doctors in my career so far, and everyone is different, and I think to be a mentor is hard because you need to understand the person, you need to understand the ambition, the limitations, and so on. It is hard work, but it's very rewarding to see my students out there in the world doing fantastic things. Some of them are much richer than I am now,
which is a good thing.
Which is a good thing, so, and they are doing so well. But building resilience is an important skill, especially being an academic and trying to innovate, trying to come up with new ideas and so on. New ideas are not very well received most of the times, especially in the academic contexts.
Yes.
Academic contexts are very closed, and,
which is strange.
Which is strange, but it is very closed. And to break the barriers of an academic field, it needs a lot of work. And I'm lucky enough that I can speak to different people. I can speak to musicians, I can speak to neuroscientists, and I can speak to computer scientists, easily. But some of my colleagues cannot, and that is difficult. To foster understanding, to foster communication between fields, and I think this is so important. And building resilience is exactly that. Is not to be put out because you have been turned down for something. Is mostly because of lack of good communication. Even when you write a paper, you get rejected so many times. It's because it's not communicated well.
Or if you don't quote the reviewer.
Yeah, the reviewers most of the time, I would say, not always, are willing to give a good feedback and to accept what you are doing, right? With exception of grant reviewers, because grant reviewers have other agendas, I think. They wanted the money for themselves. But in papers and so on, I think it's usually a good thing to be criticized and so on, and to build this, what you just mentioned, is resilience. And it's important to believe in yourself, I think, as well, to believe in what you are doing. Sometimes I find myself thinking, oh, this is completely rubbish. Why I'm doing this? Maybe this is going to go nowhere. But then next morning you wake up and you say, oh, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll continue it.
Follow your passion.
And this happens all the time. And I think, but if you believe in what you are doing and go for it and be objective and try to do the best you can, then I think you can succeed. But you are a scientist as well. So
I was in my pastime.
You know how these things work. Sometimes
I'm also a mentor, and it's always really, as you mentioned, it's really per person. It's fantastic to see.
Yeah, it is great. It is great, and you learn so much as well. From mentoring students.
Thanks for sharing that, Eduardo. So I would just looking at the watch and clock, and I know also about your timeline. So in the Entangled Health, what I'm always inviting is people writing comments and asking questions. So I have a few in my pool, and I'm running an algorithm on a real quantum computer. So it's running since 1 hour in the queue. So I think I need to switch back to the simulator.
Yeah.
But let's maybe just start a jingle, and I'm going to read the question for you, and then after this one, you can also participate as a guest, ask one question, and then
nice.
So just let me run the jingle so we hear Yeah, so this is still running, so we switch back to the simulation. Normally it's quite quick, but this time it's running on IBM FETs for whatever reason. It's still in queue. But the other question I did run before I did recording is quantum question number 99.
Oh, quantum question 99.
I think we touched it in the talk, but the question is from Charlotte from London. What's your favorite curiosity-driven journey you've taken? What's your favorite
curiosity-driven journey? Oh man, so many.
I guess it's not.
I think is when I started working with quantum computers. I think that was completely by curiosity. I knew about it theoretically when I was doing the biocomputer stuff, but it seemed so distant, in terms of understanding, because my mathematics is very poor, But in 2017, I discovered that quantum computers were being built. And I was introduced to the machine that was being built by Rigetti in Berkeley. And I went to Rigetti to visit. And then when I saw what they were doing there, I said, oh, this is great. This is exactly what I was looking for, at that particular moment. New kinds of hardware, new kinds of computational processes. And I think that is completely by curiosity that, has driven me to start this journey that I am now.
Yeah, cool. So never stop being curious.
No, never stop being curious, and I'm doing other things as well, driven by curiosity. But that's I'm going back to the biocomputing,
which is interesting. Yeah, we need to follow. I'm really keen to follow up on this one and see what you're doing.
It's nothing that I can tell concrete now, but watch this space. I think there are now all those things that I was doing 15 years ago with the chicken embryo brain. You can do that now in much more sophisticated ways. And you see, the premise for quantum computing is that quantum computation is better to simulate quantum mechanics than digital computation, right? So this is fine. And I think, of course, not only for simulations of physics, but chemistry. Chemistry is physics, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there is biology.
And it makes complicated.
Biology emerged from chemistry,
Mm-hmm.
but it's much more than chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is my pet theory, that understanding the brain and making things intelligent will be much better to use biocomputers than quantum.
Don't tell them.
Quantum computers are good for chemistry, for the
Mm-hmm.
basic level, for the low level.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you have the biological emergent properties, like life, consciousness, adaptation, these are things that I think we will stumble in the same wall that quantum mechanics stumbled when with digital computers. I think the great breakthroughs in AI will be when we have biocomputers working on top of quantum computers. And this is where I am going now.
Yeah, we need to work on that together, by the way. let's make it, but we take it offline then. Yeah. Cool. So as a guest, you also have the question to contribute your own question, because I'm sometimes, when you're on the other side of the mic and being interviewed, so the host is just too stupid to ask these questions you wanted to talk about. So feel free to propose a question and answer it. So
okay, my question is, well, I probably made the question already. So my question is, theoretically, would a biocomputer be more suitable for simulating biology than quantum computers? So that's my question, and this is my curiosity-driven research. Okay, I'm not a hardcore scientist. I'm not a hardcore computer scientist. Now I know these things, but my research is driven by curiosity, and this is where my curiosity is leading to, and that's the question. And my answer is that I think that biocomputers are the next thing now.
And I need to deviate a bit from the road and ask a follow-up question to this one, because do you think it's I mean, we have seen normal mushrooms, so mycelium, finding the optimal path or whatever, and we've seen soap bubbles finding the shortest path, whatever, so analog computing, and we've seen I mean, either digital or even analog neuromorphic infrastructure. But you're really talking about living cells.
That's right. That's what I'm talking to. Yeah. When I say biocomputer, I'm talking about living neurons computers, right? Chips with neurons. Chips with neurons. That's what I'm talking
chips
about.
With chicks.
Yeah. So this is what I am interested in.
Cool.
And at the end of the day, I don't think these different architectures, are to be separate from each other. I think there are levels. In the same way that we have, scientific levels, we have physics, chemistry, biology, psychology, sociology. You have these many levels. I think computational processes will need to mirror these levels. The fundamental level, of course, we have quantum mechanics, but then there are things that we can do very well already with the digital level. So quantum mechanics, digital, then maybe biological, and then there may be other things. We don't know. People even talk about chemical computers, chemical reactions doing computations for you. This is more or less what people try to do with quantum today. But there were things in the past, like this well-known reaction, Belousov-Zhabotinsky reaction, where you put two reactors and then
it's getting these
patterns that are cyclical. Then you can model problems in these patterns. So there is no reason why a computer needs to be with a fixed substratum.
Cool. So this was really interesting, Eduardo. So I'm just looking at the watch. So I'm saying I always love my guests to have the last word. So I'm always saying goodbye now. But if you like to share some closing statements that you think we as a take-home message,
Yeah, well, really, thank you, Thomas, for the opportunity to have this chat. I think this kind of dialogue is very nice because it brings to mind some many ideas, and it's by talking that I think we can come up with new ideas and new curiosities, if you say. But yeah, I think my final thought is um, creativity is, I think, a very important human um, characteristic, and trying to get machines to simulate creativity, I think is a bit of a waste of time. But I think to get machines to help us to be creative, that is the key. Because at the end of the day, we need to think about humans, to think about ourselves, and not about terminating ourselves, but actually, making ourselves better people. And then I think that technology are instruments for that. Of course, there are bad actors for everything, so there are bad people, but we need to think about making good out of what we are doing.
Yeah, dear friends, we are now entangled. Thanks for listening and for being part of this experiment at the intersection of quantum tech and health. If today's conversation sparked an idea, a critique, or triggered a question, please share it, and maybe your question is selected in a future episode out of the growing pool. And you know the game. If you like it, please subscribe, leave a rating, and entangle further by passing this episode to someone you think should join the gang. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep exploring the unseen with Entangled Health.
Laiul, Vov, 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 Ul,